Well, hey gamers, welcome to Blue Gamer. I'm Adam Blue. I want to use this video to do a review of Dawn of Sorrow. Crazy that Konami came out with that DS collection, so we can revisit these games, although I have already been starting that even before this happened, and I think this is a perfect time to go over it. Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow was the first DS. Castlevania came out in, what, like 2007? Could be off there, but you know, back in the mid-2000s after Aria of Sorrow, which was much received well and actually looked amazing on the GBA. Alright, I have it open here so that we can dive in. Right, so first thing, what was really neat about this Castlevania is some of the differences. I mean, we follow the same protagonist, Soma Cruz, from Aria of Sorrow. But it starts off what's cool in the village. That doesn't necessarily happen all the time in these Castlevanias. There's always different ways they start, but in this one, you know, we get a lot of the similarities. So you don't use a whip, that's for like Julius mode, but you know, you do your main combat. And what you saw there with the bat was me getting a soul. So that's a big part of this game, is getting different souls that then allow you to do different actions. So you go to equip, you know, you get your basic stuff you could put on, but then your soul. And these different souls are from different enemies. They do different things. People go and farm, and some souls are like really hard to get and take a long time. That's part of the game here. Some people like to do that, some don't. Now, to get this out of the way, as for music, I'm a huge fan of Castlevania music. I will say, you know, this song's great, and there's some other great songs. I think in general, I would put this more at the lower end of my favorite Castlevania soundtracks. Again, it's not bad. In fact, it's really well composed, just the style, very specific style that's going on here. A lot of the music is less, except for this track, a lot less in the vein of the rock style of music. All right, I wanted to look at the map here because I'm a big fan of Castlevania, and part of it has to do with the maps. So the way this game is structured, I also think it's the weakest of the advanced and DS games. Even though I find Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance to kind of veer away from what this genre or the specific Igavanias, from Koji Igarashi, sort of finally became and solidified into. Although this is, I think, the last Castlevania that, while there is an area outside the castle, is the last one that's strictly castle-based. What they did instead is, and you can kind of see in certain areas, kind of to the top right of where you see where I'm flashing, there's like a grid pattern there. That sort of becomes more of a platformy section where you have to, there's a puzzle to get through, and it takes some time, and you'll be spending some time there trying to figure out how to get through, especially the area above it, and to get to the boss that's actually up there a little later at the top of the tower to the left. It takes time to make your way through, like you're platforming. Same thing with the far right of the map, and that's actually Condemned Tower. The way that section is made, where it's almost like a platformy section just to get up to the top, because after you fight the boss, it actually then creates the rest of the navigation that you could have used to get through that area originally. What they're doing is they're sort of adding areas that are very platformy, that take your time, so you're not just going through. And I kind of understand the idea behind that. Just so there's some sections that you're taking your time at the first time, taking your time to get through, almost like it's its own experience, because then afterwards you can just teleport or rush through and it's no issue at all. And then that kind of happens at the very end of the game, the last boss. So that's over at here we go, the Abyss. So yeah, to show you the map of the Abyss real quick, you can kind of see it's its own section. This started popping up in I would say Portrait of Ruin, and then especially in Order of Ecclesia. In Aria of Sorrow, it did have sections that weren't directly connected to the castle, but it was more of you go through a door and then you pop up somewhere else, but you could still figure out then how to get to where you need to. So that was more for aesthetics. This is doing it where it's a completely other section. So this sort of thing, and I think I appreciate that between different Castlevanias, is they were trying concepts and then moving them into the next game. So I would say, because of this kind of platformy nature, sometimes it breaks up the flow that I have of trying to explore a castle. Right now I'm playing Circle of the Moon again, and that is reminding me that has a really good exploration of the map, because you're there's somewhere to constantly go, But then you'll come across some, oh, I can't do that yet, but I know where else I could go. Oh, I could go here. Oh, and then I got something. It's not linear, but it's also not trapping you like in a section. Now, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it just breaks up the flow. It makes the map, even looking at the map, it doesn't necessarily look like a castle. It just arbitrarily place things, and then as you're playing the game, then certain areas, you know, just like the area I'm at right now is the Lost Village, but above the village is that grid patterned spot, and it just kind of doesn't make sense. Again, that's not too big of a deal, but just breaking down and doing the analysis of Dawn of Sorrow, you know, that's how I feel in terms of the differences of this game. Also, bosses, I think out of most Castlevania games, DS, Advance, you know, even Symphony of the Night, I think this is some of the harder bosses in terms of they tend to have multiple phases, or they tend to just take a long time to kill. And, you know, I think that's okay. I actually don't mind that. It's just a matter of, okay, what's the best course of action here? What's the best soul to use? But remembering their patterns. And I almost feel like maybe that's for the best too, because and it's almost like, unless you're overpowered, you're gonna die when you're at bosses because you have to memorize their patterns. If you haven't, yeah, there's some bosses on here that are from other games and I know what they're gonna do, and so I'm like, oh yeah, I know what to do. And then there's bosses that, like the Gurgoroth, if I'm saying that right, the boss at the top right, the tower that I was talking about where it falls. In general, that's a hard boss for a lot of people, just because a lot of the attacks he makes are gonna hit you no matter what. There's some things you can do to kind of cheese your way out of it, but in general, again, the bosses are a little tougher. Okay, but what I think is the standout of Dawn of Sorrow is the Julius mode. The fact that you could be, here we go, Julius with the whip, which I love, you know, modes that they add, like Richter mode, whatever. Yoko Belnade's, so you have the magic ability. Also, her attack gives you health. And then you have Alucard from Symphony of the Night, which he could transform into a bat and go anywhere. He's got that, oops, wrong button. He's got that, oh yeah, if I jump and press up where you like shoot up real high. Also, it plays a lot of the classic Castlevania music throughout. So, because this is a full exploring, this is a full castle to explore, and it's not sectioned off like Portrait of Ruin, and because you could be Alucard, you could be a whip-based character, and you could be Yoko Belnade's, I would almost say Julius mode in Dawn of Sorrow is the best iteration of a Metroidvania Castlevania. What's also interesting is there's no equipping of items, there's no use of items. It's basically switching between the three characters to figure out who is best for any given scenario. A lot of times I will start doing some DPS with Yoko Belnade's and her ice shards. That helps get a lot of damage out of the enemy, and then if I need to be a little more tactile with my hits, maybe I'll use Alucard, but if I just need full power and just classic double jumping to evade, Julius. So with the music, the fact that you're these three characters that all have different abilities, I feel like this is the stronger game than the soul collecting aspect of it. Also, with Yoko Belnade's, as I mentioned, she has her attacks give health. So there are times where I don't have a way to get health, I'm far away from a save point, I'll kind of go in and out of a room just to hit an enemy to get health, and etc. So I think this game does a really good job of just being awesome. Because what happens when we get Portrait of Ruin is then they add the two characters that you can switch between. So what they start with here is actually on full display in Portrait of Ruin, and it is done in an amazing way. And as we saw with the Abyss, that sort of sectioned off area we talked about, that even becomes more of a mainstay in Portrait of Ruin as you go into portraits that are then complete separate stages and areas. So it's disconnected from the rest of the game, and I'm not too fond of that because I do love a whole interconnected world like we have in this. So anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of Dawn of Sorrow, but I think with this DS collection that just came out, for me to be able to get back into it, play it, and really discover how good Julius mode is, I think Dawn of Sorrow is best when it's in Julius mode. Otherwise, I think it's sort of mid, but still an excellent game nonetheless. So anyway, guys, let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Be cool.